Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zeb from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I am with Nick Westermann of Hewn and Hone. Nick, how are you doing?
Oh, very well, and yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Excellent.
So if you're not familiar with Nick, Nick is a full-time professional toolmaker based here in beautiful rural mid-Wales. Now this video is the culmination of a 5-part series that I'm filming on this visit to see Nick, where from start to finish Nick is showing his entire process for making a turning Sloyd knife. We literally started from a raw piece of steel and a raw piece of wood all the way to a finished product. Now in this culmination, what Nick is going to be demonstrating is some tips and suggestions about sharpening and maintenance. Now in this specific video is going to be in relation to the turning Sloyd knife. However, you can extrapolate some of the information for other bevels and other types of knives as well. So a few quick things to mention before we get on with the meat and bones of this video. All the other videos in this series, as well as other videos I've been filming with Nick, will all be listed down below in the description. Highly recommend you go check those out. Also, what we've done, we've time-stamped this video and all the other videos that we've done. So in this particular video, all the sections have been time-stamped, so you can use this video as an ongoing resource to come back to. Now those timestamps and all the sections have also been listed down below in the description. If you look at the left-hand side of all the different chapters, you will see all the timestamps. YouTube has a very cool feature. When you click on that time, it will jump straight to that section. So as you move forward, you don't have to manually scroll through to come to a particular section. You can just look at the chapters, think I want to watch this, click on the time and the video will go straight to that section. So like I said, we want this video and this entire series to be an ongoing resource for you. Also, moving on from that, everything referenced in this video for the sharpening and other paraphernalia, a lot of these items are available on Hewn and Hone. So needless to say, we'll be putting a link to everything outlined below in the description, and that will take you to all the relevant pages on Hewn and Hone to attain all the things we're going to be demonstrating throughout this video. And finally, what I'm also going to be doing is put a link below to the Hewn and Hone Instagram, where Nick is really kind of vibrant in terms of showing all the updates and all the different things he's got going on within the Hewn and Hone ecosystem. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. So Nick, before we begin the process of sharpening and maintenance, could you just do a very brief recap of where we started off in this entire series and where we're at now?
Yes, of course, yes. Well, mostly we concentrated on the steel. We started with a blank, pretty much like this, forged it out. Obviously, forging takes the steel out. Looks like it's growing, it doesn't, but we could increase the dimensions that way. So we forged it out, we cropped the blade roughly to size and then profiled it. Well, we did the heat treat so it actually acted like a knife, and then we profiled it and then we ground on the bevels. At this point I made a handle which I just about rescued, and the great thing about a round tang blade is it's so easy to actually fit it. You just drill a hole and glue it in. So that's made a finished knife, which will, even straight from the grinder, it still cuts. I mean, it's not blunt, and it's probably sharper than quite a few knives. But I'll be talking about some sharpening processes now and some sharpening and maintenance of the blade.
So just to kind of recap then, so we worked through all the processes and all of those have been outlined in the previous videos, linked to below. Just before we begin the actual nuts and bolts of the sharpening and maintenance, you're sitting down and there's a reason for that. What's the reason you're sitting down for this process?
Well, it actually started from here actually. I mean, admittedly the chair's a bit low, but I was teaching a sharpening course at Spoontown. And I was teaching my son and his girlfriend Zara to sharpen, and Jude didn't want to sit down and do it, and I was watching him do it, and because he was standing up, so the table's a bit low, so it's a bit hard to put a lot of pressure on, but if you're standing up then the table's the table's a bit high for sitting. So if you're sharpening sitting down, it's hard to put pressure on because it's a little bit high, but it's better to go slowly. If you're standing up, then the table is a bit low and you'll tend to be leaning down over it. And I was watching him and watching the mechanics of the whole thing, and he was slightly overbalanced because he was standing up and leaning down, so he was putting a lot of pressure to bear onto the blade. And because he had and he was almost using that as a third point of triangulation, so he had two legs and then this was the third point, which is great for applying pressure. But if you're feeling for the bevel engaging and you've got your whole body weight guiding it, you lose the subtlety of it. So I think for me, it's much better to be sharpening sitting down. So I'm perfectly balanced at this point, and I can just apply, I can feel for the bevel engaging like this, although admittedly on soft, on leather, which is comparatively soft, it's not going to be so easy, but it's much easier than that. So I think if you've got a lot of steel to scrub off, then standing up and leaning into it has got its place, but this is a more subtle process. So when I'm teaching sharpening, I'll tend to advise people strongly to be sitting down, and I think that's quite important.
So to begin the process, where would you actually like to begin?
Well, I'll start off with the process. As you can see, this was sharpened to 1,200 grit on the belt grinder, and it's cut, and it's actually left. It's not like polished on the end grain, but it's actually cut well. It's not leaving track marks. So I'll show you what I'd normally do, which would just be to strop.
So what compound are you using?
This is the white compound that I use for all my finishing. And I'll just, if I'm finishing a blade to sell, I'll tend to, because I know that there's not been any edge damage, all we've got is 1,200 grit edge, which is a little bit jagged, but there's no edge damage. I'm quite happy to strop. So I'll just show you the stropping process and what that does to the edge. So I'm going to hold it flat, rotate until I feel the bevel engage, and then run away. Now this is quite an old soft strop actually, but that's fine for what we need to do. And what I tend to do, I've lost count, but I'll pretend I've done 5. I'll do 5 the other side. I always obviously go away from the edge. And then another couple. Just so if you've got a burr, it's like it's centred at least, or the edge is centred. And that's all I'd tend to do if I was selling a blade. Let's have a look, see if I'm talking about it. So that's the cut without the stropping. This is after. Yeah, you can see there's a sort of shine to that, whereas this has got a matte finish. So it's definitely feeling sharper. So yeah, and I'm quite happy to sell it at that level of sharpness. So that's what I'd normally do, but when you've used the blade and you want to sharpen, you can't keep stropping, because a strop, this is actually quite a soft one. This is probably one of my prototype ones using it now, to be honest. It's fine, but strops do compress and the edge is slightly rounded by it, but that's what basically gives a strop its sharpening action, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. Particularly with a turning Sloyd, because the whole idea is that it will turn in a cut, which works best with a slightly convex edge. So if you want a blade to turn, you don't really want dead flat bevels, so you're looking for a slightly different thing than if you're using a Sloyd knife with big flat bevels. So, but what I'll do is I'll show you, if this had been damaged, how I'd sharpen it. And these are the films which I've been very keen on recently. This is 600 grit and it's a silicon carbide one, but I also sell a diamond version, which is it's no better to start off with, but diamond lasts longer. And
so just to touch on something very briefly, so these are the bases that you put this adhesive paper on, isn't it?
Yes, this is the plastic honing pad and then the self-adhesive film, and it peels cleanly, there's no residue, and it'll stick back down if you need to. So if you put it on and it hasn't gone properly, you can just peel it off and reposition it. But yes, I sell these honing pads, which are just backings for the films, and they're not that deep, so one isn't really enough to get your knuckles under. I mean, it will sort of fit, but it's a pain, so I tend to stack 2 up, one on top of the other, then I've got enough clearance.
And you have some rubber mat in between for the friction, is that correct?
Yes, it's just anti-slip, yes, non-slip mat, yes, yeah.
Excellent. So you're starting off with a 600 grit then?
600 grit, which is, we don't need it because there's no edge damage, but I'll show you what I do. And it's exactly, well, the way I sharpen, what I've found is that when I used to sharpen, I would always have a good side, so I'd be quite good sharpening this way, but then I would turn it round and do with the edge going towards me, and I'd always get a bit of a bevel rocking there. And then when the bevel rocked, it would get worse. So I'd have a flat side which stayed flat and a rock, so I'd end up a rock, you know, a convex bevel on one side. So I'd end up a rather asymmetric blade. And I used to never really like sharpening. I mean, as I say, you can argue that a slightly convex bevel isn't the end of the world on a turning Sloyd, but at least it should be convex on both sides. So what I've found, for me, the best way to sharpen is to sharpen ambidextrously, so I don't no longer have a good side and a bad side. So what I'll do is I'll put the blade at a bit of an angle in this way, so it's slightly skewed. Tip it up until it engages, and then I'll just work backwards and forwards. You can go into the edge, and then obviously to make the tip engage you've got to lift your hand, and you can see, so there, you can see a black line appear where the bevels, where the tip is cutting. You can see this black line running out, so I've reached the tip there. And I'm just going backwards and forwards into the edge. I don't really need to do much because I know I haven't, but if you had edge damage, that's what you'd be trying to get rid of. And then when I do the other side, I don't turn this way, so I'm looking for the whole edge to go matte, really, because we're onto a coarser grit, and the 600 is much coarser than the 1200 it is sharpened at. So we've got that done, and then rather than go towards me, I just swap hands and do exactly the same thing. So I'm applying downwards pressure with the finger here. And I will do a bit of stab sharpening towards the tip. You can see this sort of zigzag appearing where I'm getting the tip to engage. But once I get the tip to engage, I don't then carry on. You know, I was talking about this sweep thing that you see quite often. People will come off the edge. There's no need to do that. So I do a bit of stab sharpening, so I'm going sort of in and out. But largely I want the scratch pattern to be into and away from the edge rather than parallel to the edge. And yeah, nearly that.
And to make sure you're making contact with the bevel, is this where maybe a Sharpie also comes into play?
Yes, a Sharpie could help, yes, yeah. What I'm finding here, see there's a little hollow there, and that's not my bad sharpening, it's my bad grinding. I've got a little bit of a hollow in the grind, and it doesn't matter, but if I keep going I'll have to remove steel here to get, I can't get to that easily, but that is a function of grinding, not sharpening. Oh yeah, I've got through it now. Yeah, didn't take that long. So that's that side done. I just do run back to this again. Yeah, that looks okay. So that's 600 grit. That side is 7,000, which is too fun. And then I'll make a jump to 2,000 grit. This is a silicon carbide paper again, but it's brand new, it'll cut well. Exactly the same thing, but all I'm doing is taking out 600 grit scratches. I shouldn't really be aiming to do anything else at this point. I'll do all the actual sharpening that is needed at 600 grit. I'm just refining whatever bevel form I've recovered at this point. So you should see now that it's taking on a higher polish. And yeah, we could mark up the bevel and see where we're hitting, but I'm fairly confident I'm hitting the, you can see this zigzag thing, which is more stab sharpening. The point being is that I can just about, I mean, it's quite a narrow bevel, but I can feel the bevel here locate because I've got enough bevel width. By the time I get to the tip, there's no way I can feel what angle the bevel should be at, because there's no support and it will tend to tip. But if I do a stab sharpening action, I'm using this bit for support, and then I'm just lifting up so I can maintain the angle easier. So although I'm not a fan of stab sharpening in general, as a way of sharpening the tip, I don't think there's a better way to do it. So that is the tip. That's that side done. And it is a bit easier with new paper because you can see where that you get a tail mark from the black is obviously steel, which has been cut by the abrasive. Now it would help if the paper went all the way to the end. Yeah. There's a little bit in this dent, which I was saying, which I'm trying to nearly there. I can still see it's a bit hard to take that out. I'll try and get it. Still see a little bit there, which needs a bit more to come out. Nearly. Sorry about that, but yes. That'll do. And now I'll just do a little bit on the other side. But I don't actually have a favoured side now, which never was the case before. I'd always find it much easier on one side than the other. But yeah.
So doing it ambidextrously just takes a bit of practice, basically.
Yes, once you get used to it, it feels ever so normal to me. I'd never go back to it. It does mean that your strop has to be ambidextrous, or strop, or well, if you're using. No, I suppose, yeah. With a strop, it's not. Yeah, if you're gonna do it this way, then if you've got a strop, it needs to be ambidextrous, in that you have some which have got a rounded side. So you'd then have to turn, because you can't just turn over if it's got a rounded side. So it's a little bit more difficult. But yeah, generally I wouldn't go back. I've been sharpening a lot of the Sloyd blades which we make with this method, and it's clicked for me finally. But I must say, this is the most difficult blade to sharpen because you've got such a short bevel. There's very little to locate. A Sloyd knife has got a bevel. If I was sharpening this, I'd have a much easier time because I'd put the bevel on and you've got 3 times the width. So you've got 3 times the support. It'd be so much easier to hold this to lay flat because it will sit so much easier. So it's so much easier to do a wide. This is probably one of the hardest ones to do. But also it's a bit more forgiving because if you do convex the bevel, it doesn't matter because the whole point is that it will turn the cut. But yeah, there's a little bit where I must admit I messed up at the 600 grit, but I've taken that out now. There we go. So that's looking quite nice and shiny now. So I'm quite happy to go up to the next grit, which is 7,000, and this is a diamond, which will cut a little bit better. Well, they're brand new, they'll all cut, but it will last, the cut will last longer. So all I'm doing, again, is taking out 7,000 grit scratches. There's still a little bit here where the hollow is for my bad grinding, which needs to come out a bit, so I'll try and sort that out. Oh, that did go quickly, yeah. I'm pressing hard enough that I'm wobbling my slightly duff table, but it is going. It is removed. Even at 7,000 grit, I can actually still do a bit of shaping, but ideally I'd have done it properly at 600 grit. Then all I'd be doing is removing scratches, which is a lot easier. But I think I've caught it. That looks good, yeah. I'm happy with that. That's got a better polish than the 1200 grit scratch pattern from the grinder. What I do now is strop. So I don't need to do much in the way of stropping here with compound. This has got white compound on. Because at 7,000 grit there's not really a lot in the way of scratches to remove, so I'm not going to do much or much pressure because I don't want to round the bevel any more than I have. Generally a harder compound, a harder leather strop is advantageous because you can press harder and you don't get compression. I mean, one way of getting around a soft strop is that you can do 50 strokes very gently, but you won't necessarily do a similar action to a hard strop. You could press down hard and maybe get the same amount done if you do 10 strokes on a harder strop, because it won't compress as much. So you can actually, the harder you press, obviously, the more sharpening effect you get. So that is pretty much there. What I'll finish off with now is this is just a strop, a very hard strop, which hasn't got any compound on, but the silicates in the leather will help polish it up. And we'll try it out and see if we notice a benefit in the surface polish in the because generally the polish in the steel is reflected in the polish in the cut facets. So if you've got a better finish in the steel, the wood will show a better finish. That's the plan anyway. So that's the edge. Yeah, it'd be nice to take a little bit longer, but it will do. So I'll make another cut. I'll do a cut in the middle. We'll see what that. Yeah, I think that shows another level of polish. I don't know if you pick up, that's where we started just on before stropping. That's just stropping, and that's sharpening, then stropping. And I think I can see a more polished, I'm not sure if you catch that in the light and see.
So some questions, if I may.
Sure, yeah.
So with the different grit papers, I noticed you had it double-sided. So is that how you would normally kind of advise people who get the papers and boards off you to kind of do it double-sided so you've got...
Yes, I think so. I don't see a reason not to have paper. It will take paper on both sides, so it's safe because you can't really peel it off and put it somewhere and put it back on unless you've got a very clean surface. So it makes sense to use both sides. They're not expensive pads, so yeah. Yes.
And with the grit paper, so how often would you change the papers?
That's difficult to say. It depends. The diamond, the only downside I think of a diamond is that it lasts so long that the degradation is really hard to know when it's time to call it quits. With the PSA sandpapers I sell, they don't last that long, and when I was doing blades I would expect to get 6 knives from a strip and then I'd peel it off and get rid of it. With the silicon carbide films I sell, I was getting 30 or 40 blades out of a strip. With a diamond, I actually counted over 100 blades from a strip. And the trouble is that if you're doing the PSA sandpaper, you'll actually notice the difference between the 5th and the 6th, and it's getting obviously more difficult and it's time to stop. With diamonds, there's no difference between the 100th blade you sharpen and the 101st. It still cuts, it's just a little bit more difficult. So it's a bit more difficult to say like when you stop. But what you can do is that when it loads like this, I haven't got it, but you can just use a rubber to clean this. So you can wash it in soap and water, but you can just clean this with a rubber and get the, because it's not, this black isn't particularly the abrasive breaking down, it's just getting loaded with the metal particles. So you can clean it up and you'll notice, if you clean it up and you notice an improvement, then that suggests that the abrasive was just loaded. But it can be, if it recovers when you clean it, then it's still got some life in it. If after you've cleaned it, it doesn't recover, then the abrasive is blunt, and then that's probably time to put a new strip in. I mean, the silicon carbide, I've had these made in sheets so that you would get 3 strips out of a sheet, and a sheet is £2.10. The diamond is £4 for 3 strips, or a sheet which will yield 3 strips. So 3 strips. So it's only just over £1 a strip. It's not an expensive thing to use, but the lifespan of this is really exceptional. So yeah, that's. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you when you. I mean, the more often you change it, the better it cut. But obviously, there's a point when you're chucking away abrasive, which has still got quite a bit of life in it. Just see if I can.
So this is the hairs you've got, yeah?
Yeah, this is. I'll just see if I can make it whittle along the. No, just straight through. One more go. There we go. So it's, yeah, it'll cut along the hair, which is pretty good. And let's say it's not really necessary, but it's nice to be able to cut part way through. That's a sign that I've got it really sharp. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Other things I'd say is that if, obviously it's dry wood, so it doesn't matter, but if you have been cutting green wood, I always think it's good to strop just a little bit on a strop which has got some compound on, because just a few strokes, because there's wax in the compound which leaves a slightly waxy residue on the blade. It'll clear off any resin or sap or whatever and stop the blade rusting. So I think that's a really useful thing to do. And it's quite nice to always come to a blade which is sharp. There's nothing worse than coming to a blade which is blunt and it's got little spots of rust on, because you've got to dry it off. And the last thing I'll do is, I can never keep my hands clean to any extent, and particularly as the oil's wet, we've got some dirt on the facets, so I'll just have one more go at giving it another dose of this lovely oil, and then we'll.
So this is part of the ongoing maintenance that every so often?
I mean, like, yes, yeah. Every so often, I'll give the blade the hand. They'll start to look dry after a while, and I'll give it a little bit of oil.
And just to remind people who didn't watch our previous videos what oil this is.
This is some Skeleton Saw's peacock oil. It's the old one which has got turpentine in, which smells very nice.
And just to stress that it's not made from actual peacocks.
It's not, as far as I know. He doesn't. Well, he keeps the secret. He keeps the formula secret. I'm pretty certain it doesn't contain peacocks. No. So, but yeah, I can. And also, when the oil's dried, it will silver wood better, but because this is only an hour old, it's picking up dirt, so I'll just try and, but if I let it dry with dirt in it, it will seal it in. So what I really want to do is clean the dirt out, get some oil on, clean the dirt out and then let it dry with clean oil, and then it will do a bit better. So hold it here and we'll see if we can, yeah, see the amount of filth. Yeah, it pulls it out very well because I think it's because it's got this high solvent thing, but yeah. Yeah, look at the muck I must have put in. So I'll have another go. Otherwise I'll just grind that oil in. And then, just in case I forget, like any oil, drying oil, it can combust when it dries. I really think the small quantities I'm using, it's very unlikely to, but I always take it out and burn it on the spot to save me forgetting about it and having to worry. The other thing you can do is just soak it in water, I think, and if you have a big sodden mass of tissue, I don't think there's any danger of that drying out and catching fire. Still, who would have thought? I'll do one more, just see when.
And something you mentioned on a previous video, people didn't catch it, and that is to use white tissue or kitchen towel.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah, particularly with an oil which has got volatiles in. If you use a kitchen towel with a dye in it, you can pull the dye out of the. Pull the dye out, and then it will really. I've dyed handles blue from using blue. Look at that. Anyway, I don't think I can. I think we'll stop. Stop there. And I would say actually that kitchen towel is better because it's less likely to break down and fray at all. Let's just. Don't leave fingerprints on it. There we go. And I think with oil, it's odd actually, because generally with oil, thin coats applied regularly, like with spoons, seems to work a lot better. However, if you read the instruction on this, which are really detailed, he's talking about soaking the oil in and really let it penetrate and leave it for 15 minutes. And he's got a very complicated process, which I must admit I don't follow. I do like coats, but this oil is ever so good that normally if you put a thick layer of oil in, it dries and it's quite gummy and not very nice, whereas this oil is beautiful. But if you do leave it quite thick, when it dries it leaves it will dry with a waxy surface on top, so the oil underneath seems to harden, it leaves wax on which you can then polish up, whereas if you do that with linseed and leave a big slick of oil on, it can dry really gummy and be tacky and not very nice. But this oil is brilliant, and he's got a newer version out which has got I think it's based on orange oil, which is he was allowed to post. I think the difficulty was because it was flammable, he had difficulty posting it, which is why he's changed the formula. So yeah, I think I'll remember to burn that, but that finishes a series. That's pretty much, we've come from here to there.
So there you have it, my friends. That is a wrap for this video and this entire series. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The pleasure has been all mine. It's been really wonderful seeing the whole process with you, spending time and seeing the entire stages, literally from raw steel and raw wood all the way to a finished product. So just a quick recap. Like I said, this is the final installment of this mini series on making a turning Sloyd knife. All of the videos in this series are linked to down below in the description, as well as other videos that I filmed with Nick on this particular visit down to see him. Also, as a reference at the beginning, the different components that Nick has used that are available on his Hunan Hone website are all going to be linked to down below, so it's easier access for you to go should you want to build your own sharpening kit up. Also, following on from there, as I mentioned, this video has been time-stamped, so you can just skip to whatever section that you want, and all the timelines are along the timeline of this video if you hover across, but also all the chapters are listed out down below with the times on the left-hand side. And as I mentioned, YouTube has a very cool feature. If you click on the timestamps in that description, the video will go straight to that section, saving you having to manually scroll through. So this video is provided to you as an ongoing resource. So if there's a specific section you want to go to, you can just jump to that section and just kind of consume what it is you want to have a look at. And also, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I will be putting a link down below to the Hunan Hone Instagram. It will mean the world to me if you gain any value from this video and this series whatsoever. It will mean the world to me to go check out Hunan Hone on Instagram, give them a follow. Also, by following them on Instagram, you can see the myriad of work Nick is getting up to in terms of developing new products and also fleshing out existing ones as well as they go to market. So one final question I've got for you, Nick, is, so with the sharpening kit, would I be right in saying that the way you've got it laid out on Hunan Hone is it's laid out in a way that people can buy the individual components and build out the set as they deem fit?
Yes, absolutely. Because different people will want. If you're sharpening axes, you'd probably be looking at the coarser grits. If you're doing little chip carving knives, you probably wouldn't. You'd start at maybe 2000 grit, whereas with axes you might not even finish at 2000 grit. So it depends on what you want. So I've not put together kits as such.
Right.
So, yeah.
So people basically build their own.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's like a pick and mix, and they can say, I want this and this and this.
Yes.
So with this video tied in with obviously what Nick has available on Hunan Hone, the idea is with this information you'll be armed now to start to put together your own sharpening kit, because sharpening is such an important component of green woodworking, carving, any kind of activity using knives. And so Nick is one of the kind of the best people that I know out there to kind of talk about this, because he's such a renowned tool maker. So like I said, links to everything down below, the videos in the description, as well as all the components that are available on Hunan Hone, as well as all the other videos that I filmed on this particular visit down to see Nick. Now, all being well, we haven't properly fleshed this out or discussed this at the time of filming, but the hope is in the future at some point when circumstances and timing permit, I can come back down and we can maybe do a continuation of series of things that are available on Hunan Hone, and then with the videos providing more of a detailed tutorial step by step of what people would do and how they would go about using that. So like I said, stay tuned to the channel, and I highly recommend you go check out Nick's work on his website and his Instagram, as you can see the amazing things that he's getting up to. Nick, a sincere thank you once again.
Oh, thank you for coming. It's been really good.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend time with you and to kind of film the series. You're someone I've looked up to, a lot of people look up to for many years. So it's wonderful to get the opportunity to spend time with you in your workshop in wonderful Wales, and document it for people to consume.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really good.
Thank you so much. And guys, there you go. Really hope you enjoyed this video and this entire series. A huge thank you to Nick once again. And I hope you enjoyed kind of the videos that we also got coming in the future. Any questions or queries, be sure to hit up Hunan Hone on Instagram. And like I said, the website is full of a lot of information. So there you go, guys. Really do appreciate you watching up until the end, if you have done so already. And until the next installment of a Z Outdoors video, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. From Nick Westermann of Hunan Hone and myself, Z Outdoors, peace out.